What's happening, financial coaches? Pete here. I want to talk to you today about how much money you will make as a financial coach. And I want to stay away from the temptations here of being kind of a salesman and saying, hey, the amount that you can make as a financial coach is limitless, because that's true. That's true about maybe any job or any independent practice. So the reality is here that I don't think I want us to focus on what is possible, and I want us to focus on what is probable, right? And so I've seen this question come up a lot, and I think what we just tend to do is we tend to have a confirmation bias, and we kind of look at numbers that we think are probable, but they're really outliers. So first of all, kitchens.com, they have a blog, podcast. I listen to the podcast. They're pretty good here. But one of the things that they had here is an article back a few years ago. What is financial coaching and the best practices for becoming one? And the sentence that I want to focus on here is what I think drives a lot of people into the business. And I'm just going to highlight it. It says, for others, it might even be a preferable alternative to the traditional path as a financial advisor, with what is still $100,000 income potential. And what I think people look at is they look at that and they kind of start trying to reverse engineer it, and they're like, how much do you charge? $100 an hour, $150 an hour, $60 an hour, whatever it might be. Oh yeah, totally. I'll multiply that by $2,200 a year, and man, that makes a ton of sense. I can make more. And what I think is that when people are going out there and researching this stuff, and there's a group called the Asset Funders Network, and they publish an annual report on financial coaches and the state of the financial coaching industry, there are people that are making six figures. I have done it in the past myself, and there are some people that are doing it right now, and some of the people that you know. And I think what happens here is that there are probably a handful of people that are breaking six figures, and many of these are not smashing six figures. They are in the six-figure mark. But when we talk about six figures, that can be anywhere from $100,000 to $999,000, so 100 to a million. And so there are people that use six figures because it creates this image of being really successful. But there's a big difference between 100 and a million, right? There's a 10x difference there. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as it compares to the traditional personal finance world, in like financial planning and asset management and some of those things, because I think they also use the same terminology. But when you see some of those people making $800,000-$900,000 a year, and I've known these guys and worked with them, that's a good income, and they're maybe working 30 hours a week. I mean, that's totally possible, but I don't think financial coaching is like that. And I'm going to show you, I think, a little bit of a peek behind the curtain and just kind of talk to you about what I've seen with financial coaches, what I've hired financial coaches, what I've paid financial coaches, what we expect them to do, and those types of things. Now, as an independent practitioner, you are probably going to have a little bit of a difference with this, but I would say I'm going to give you some of my thoughts, having done both sides, salaried and independent practicing, of what you think should really expect, right? So first of all, if we just look at the information out there that's financial coach salary information, I'll pull this up. It's by the National Financial Educators Council. This is very similar to the Asset Funders Network research. If you look at Glassdoor, any of them, what are financial coaches out there making? And you can see here, it all looks like we're in the low $40,000 range. And I would say $40,000 is probably a good number to measure this by. If you are looking at a job in financial coaching, if you're going out and getting a role with a debt organization, a debt consolidation organization, a counseling organization, an agency, those types of things. And the reason for this is because there isn't any licensing, certifications. There's no real educational background, right? So people of all stripes can come into this, and there's a big variation between people, and I would call them coaches versus senior coaches that came in with a coaching background, with some financial knowledge, and people that came in with really strong interpersonal skills, with a lot of financial history and background and education, and even though there's one word difference, coach to senior coach, there is a huge amount of difference between them. Now, that being said, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a huge amount of difference between the money, but most agencies or most nonprofits, between paying $40,000 and $60,000, that is a big deal, right? If you have to think about fundraising an additional $20,000 just to pay people's salaries, that's a big deal. Now, if we look at these numbers, what I don't think we're getting in here are some of the ancillary benefits, some of the employer-based benefits that you might be getting. So you might be getting some disability insurance, a little bit of life insurance, maybe a little 401k match or 403b match, those types of things. Maybe a couple weeks paid time off is what I'd kind of guess in this deal. But I'd also say that I'm going to guess that a lot of these are not salary positions, that they are hourly positions. Why this falls in line exactly with what I was hiring for in financial coaches is we would start people around $17, $18 an hour. And guess where that lands? Right at $40,000. And even if you are around for a few years and you did get yourself up after, thousands of sessions up to a senior financial coach, you would probably be in the $22, maybe $23 range. At the very highest end, what we were paying is $28 for, again, people that were kind of smashing in all dimensions, and even what I would call not just a senior coach, but a master coach. And $28 an hour is about $60,000 a year. You know what I'm saying here? And so what I'm saying is that that person was maybe twice as productive as the $40,000 person, but they were only getting paid 50% more. It's just kind of how it works in the salaried world. Now, that person was also able to take on more and usually work fewer cases and fewer appointments, but had more complexity in them, right? We would try to give them the retirement income type of conversations and the asset conversations and saving for retirement, financial independence, and some of those things. Whereas, the more basic coaching was done on budgets, and I'd have the regular coaches there, so a little closer to the $40,000. But what I'm saying here is that I think that most people are surprised to hear, hey, the most of the gravity will be around the $40,000, $41,000, $42,000, $43,000 salary mark, and it's still going to be a stretch to get to the $50,000 or $60,000 mark. Not even I'm talking about the $100,000 mark, right? Because now if you're in there, what I would expect is not only are you doing a lot of financial coaching, but you're building a lot of content, you're doing podcasts, you're doing workshops, seminars, you're traveling, you're in the sales, you're training people, you're reviewing calls, you're doing a lot more too as well. So again, I'm talking about like the employee world here, and this is what I think you should expect. Now, this is not a bad career. $40,000 to $50,000 for helping people, I think, is actually a really great opportunity. I think for me, it doesn't really even feel like work. Now, that doesn't mean it's not a lot of effort and isn't exhausting. As I've said in another video, I had one day where I did 21 or 22 sessions in a day. They were all half hours, but even at a half an hour, it's a long, long day. And I even remember that we weren't going to get a lunch break. And so I was texting one of my guys about, hey, any chance you could go quick pick me up a sandwich, just, whenever it's ready, just bring it into the room here, just knock on the door and apologize for interrupting and bringing my sandwich in, and that's just one of those things where you're running on caffeine all day, and it's just, it's exhausting. You would not want to do that back to back. You would not want to make a career out of that. What we expected out of the regular coaches was 8 sessions a day. Now, there weren't always 8 sessions a day, and, we could do more. We could do 10 if we really had issues. Sometimes there were incentives around getting things done before the end of the year. Sometimes the economy was falling apart, whatever it is. But most of the time, most people are running 4 to 6 a day. So that's, I think, what you should expect if you are a salaried financial coach. So, not necessarily a lot of money, kind of a lot of work, but I think it's enjoyable. I think it's meaningful. And I think it's actually probably a job where it's preferable to some of the other jobs that you might say, hey, that is a $60,000 job, but this financial coaching job is a $40,000 job. For example, let's say you are processing insurance claims. It may not be something that's really interesting. It may not be really challenging on a day-to-day basis, or something else, like maybe you're an enroller for benefits or submitting financial aid applications. These aren't things that are necessarily very creative. They're not really tapping into your need for like meaning in some ways, right? And so you may say, hey, I'm willing to take a $15,000 pay cut, do this, work with people, see the expression in their faces and their eyes, and help them get out of debt or pain or make financial strides or whatever it might be. So there's definitely a worthwhile trade-off here, and especially if you're getting benefits like health insurance and some of these other things too, it can be worth it. Now, all right, so now you know what people are really making out there. You know what I paid. You know what I expected out of that. Now, let's say you're doing this independently. The realistic expectation, I think, is that you're going to make a fraction of this. I think you will make more money as a salaried or hourly financial coach for an organization than you will on your own. I just think that's the average. What is really, really tough here is to get enough data. The surveys that happen out here are really hard with financial coaches. I've had this problem. I've even tried to get some financial coaches who are no longer in this business to come on and talk to me here, but it's actually hard to find them because what we have is a survivor bias. The people that make it are the ones that tell you about what they're doing, why they're making it, and their podcasts and their videos and how they're crushing it. And, now they're making a living, maybe making $60,000, maybe cresting the 6-figure income. And so that's a survivor bias, because now you've taken like the fraction, the minority of this these groups that have started and the people that have started, and you're looking at what they're doing now. But what you're missing is the 80, 90, maybe 99% of the people who didn't make it. So this is a problem in getting this information for people, like how many people wash out, and of the people that didn't even wash out, but how much are they really making on the side? You know, if you think about, hey, I want to make $40,000 a year, right? Now you're talking $3,000 a month. Can you find $3,000 a month? That is not a small task. A lot of people, when I'm talking to them about financial coaches, are struggling to find 1 hour of coaching a month. Now you're talking about 50 or 100 or $150 a month. And so when I see people struggling that hard to find an extra $100 or $200 a month in a business that is supposed to be flourishing, that's supposed to be easy, that's supposed to be rewarding, I have a hard time believing a lot of people are finding thousands of dollars a month. Now there are some, but what I'm trying to say is, like, don't focus on the exceptions here. Don't focus on the people who have been crushing it for years, who have been putting out blog posts and videos and working their networks and going out to events and pressing the flesh on things, and haven't had the pause of COVID, by working from home, that they have been planting a lot of the seeds before this out in person, networking with individual advisors and mortgage brokers and realtors and people in their industry, right? So what I'm saying is that I think in most cases you will find that making a couple $100 is going to be really tough, and what's going to end up happening is that you might make, let me call it $10,000, just round numbers. It's not based on anything, but $10,000 in a year. The question is that okay? And it might be, right? You might not need the money from financial coaching to sustain you. You might have a second income. You might have other streams of income that can pay the bills, right? And maybe this is just something, hey, as it comes up, I'll do it, right? I'll just kind of do it on demand. I'm not going to pour myself into it. I'm not going to release a weekly podcast because, as I've talked about, the effective hourly wage, all that stuff that you're doing to help feed that funnel, you need to count as time. That's the only way to be fair about this. How much time, how much money are you bringing in? What is your effective hourly rate? Because let's say you bring in $1,000 this month in terms of income, and that's, let's call it 10 sessions at $100, right? Well, it's very easy to say I'm making $100 an hour, but if you brought in those 10 sessions and then you had to go to some networking events, you wrote a newsletter, you spent a few hours on podcast episode a week, whatever it might be, you have to add all that in and divide it by your total amount of income, and that's going to give you your effective hourly rate. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's $20 an hour or $15 an hour. Now, my point here is, now we're getting into the place where you would probably be better off just working for an agency. You'd be better off working for a company that's hiring. Like I said, we'd start people at $15, $18 an hour, somewhere in that range, move them up to $23 an hour. And they're getting paid for every hour that they're working. Same for you. If you're charging $100 for a 1 hour session, but there's an hour of prep and an hour of post, you're not getting $100 an hour. You're making $33 an hour. Not to mention, have you done any sales on the top of that? What I'm trying to say here is that we tend to bias ourselves to just look at what generates money and how much literal time we spent on the actual billable portion. And we kind of push all these other things out there. I would have done them anyway. It would have been for my own education. Well, we build in education too. And for, my peeps that had to have CEUs each year, they got paid to study. They got paid to go to training and conferences and classes and things like that. So are you? Because you have to build that in. If it's required for your job, then you need to do that. You need to know where that's coming from. Because if you're not bringing any money and you're still paying $500 to get certified or to renew your CEUs or whatever it might be, then you've got to keep that all in mind, right? It's not fair to just count what you want and base it on that. Now, that my whole point there is that might be okay, but my guess is that even as a independent practitioner on this, I don't think most people are going to break the $40,000 mark. I really don't. Now, if you are, great, bully for you. What I want to see really is more aggregate data. I really hope that more coaches are willing to do surveys and things like this. And again, it's survivor bias. If you're making money, you're happy to fill out that survey. But what I found is that, even on my email list of people I've talked to and sent out surveys to try to get my own data, a little bit of a little bit of just cursory data on this, you don't get them back from the people that aren't doing it. You don't get it back from the people that don't want to report their numbers because they're embarrassed about it. And I'm not trying to beat anyone up or embarrass anyone, right? We just report them in the aggregate anyway. But what I'm trying to see here is really what should people expect. And I still think the data out there, the information that a lot of people are basing their decision to go into financial coaching on is somewhat flawed. It's somewhat biased to the high end, right? So if you're doing this part-time, if you're doing this at home, you're running your own business, and you are making $40,000, I think you're smashing it. I really do. I think you are crushing it, because I don't think most people that do this independently are anywhere near there. Now, I would love to hear from you, regardless of what you're doing. I just want to hear the honest answer. If you're making money, if you're living on this, in some way, I would love to hear that. If you have been doing this for the last 6 months and you don't have a client, I'd love to hear that. If you've been doing it for 2 years and you've brought in $30,000, I'd love to hear that. All of those things. Feel free to put those in the comments below or reach out to me, because what I'd really love to hear here is what people are really doing. What can people really expect? And if you have that story about what you're doing and what you made, and you're willing to share that, I'd even love to interview you about it. We can talk about that, put a video out there that I think will really help people, because I think that a lot of people are basing it on bad information. Now, I want to get back to a point I made earlier about this, and it's why I'm doing less coaching than ever. And the reason is it's a scale issue. So I have a number of irons in the fire, and some of these things scale better than others. So, I really focus on things that will make money, that will bring in income. And coaching is great because it is trading my time and expertise for money in return. But what that means is it's just effort. I just have to put in more time for more money. And over the years, as I've been doing other things, some of these other things that I've been working on have now scaled up better, right? I don't have to put in any more time, and the money that's coming in from them is better off. And these can be anything, right? From starting an Etsy store, or doing a YouTube channel, or starting a business, or a lawn care business, or an HVAC company, or going to law school, or whatever it might be, or putting online courses. There's lots of ways to do it. Real estate investing has been a very common one in the financial independence world. And so for me, the financial coaching is one of the things that doesn't scale very well. It takes a lot of time. It's a lot of effort. And, what I want to do is really deploy my time towards some of these other things that I'm hoping to also build up. So that's why I'm doing less and less coaching. Not because it's not worth it, and not because I don't like it, but, we all have the same number of hours in a day. Now, what I'm saying is, if you're not there, this is a good way to trade your time for money in a way that is leveraging your skills, providing reward and value to you and your clients, and usually compensates in a fair way. You don't have to be at $150 or $600 an hour, right? Even if you're getting $50 an hour, for a lot of people, that's more than they're making in a salary position. But what I am saying here is that if you're getting into it and you're saying, and maybe you're even deluding yourself a little bit, you're saying, hey, I haven't made a lot of money in the last few months. I haven't made a lot of money in the last 6 months. I haven't made a lot of money in my first year of coaching. But I know that I have seen things like this where you can make $100,000 a year. Well, don't think that that's the average, that there's some sort of reversion to the mean, that if you just keep doing these things that are on checklists of financial coaches, that's where you get. I think that when people say this, what they are doing is they are kind of shooting for the moon and putting the biggest number out there that they can. And I would say that probably the exception in a big way is the $100,000 financial coach. Again, I'm not saying that there aren't people out there. I've been them. But what I'm saying is that most people, the gravity here is, if you're doing this full time, is probably around $40,000. And if you think you can stay at home and work 10 hours a week, kind of build this on the side, and even make the $40,000, I think that that's not necessarily realistic. Now, again, none of these numbers are bad. You've just got to have, I think, a better picture of what you're getting into, so that you can make a decision based on the reality of, hey, if I kind of do this part-time over the next year, will I be bringing in $10,000 a year, $20,000 a year? Yeah, maybe that's likely. Maybe that's likely. How does that work for you? That's a decision you've got to make for yourself. But if you're saying, hey, I've got a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 job right now, and I want to quit to become a financial coach because the upshot here is I could make more money and work even less, I'm just trying to add a little bit dose of reality, just trying to help you make a decision that's not going to ruin you financially as someone who's supposed to be a financial expert. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully it's not too much of a downer, but what I want to do here is do a little real talk with you and help people avoid a lot of heartache in the end. That's it. See you later.